By the time I realized what was happening, my entire family was in shambles, and I was finally free from their hold. At 32, I had everything I thought I ever wanted: a successful career, a big house in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in Boston, and a family that, I thought, loved me. But what they didn't know was I was already making a plan that would ruin everything they stood for. If you've ever felt taken advantage of by the people closest to you, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. You're not alone in this. My name is Madison, and I'm a marketing VP at one of the largest firms in the city. I've worked hard to get here. No handouts. Everything I have, I've earned. I'm not saying that to brag, but to give you context, I didn't come from money. I didn't come from privilege. I had to build my life from the ground up. And I thought, at the time, that my family was part of that journey. But as I sit here now, looking back, I see things much differently. For years, I was the responsible one, the one who always showed up. Whenever anyone needed anything, I was there. I helped my sister, Paige, out when she lost her job. I didn't think twice about sending her $200 every month to help her get by. It started as a small gesture. You know, the kind of thing you do for family. But it didn't stop there. Paige never really got back on her feet, and I kept giving. It felt like it was never going to end. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought this was what family does for each other, right? But looking back, it wasn't about family. It was about me being the one they could always count on to bail them out. Every time I lived in this big house in a wealthy suburb of Boston, people would probably look at me and think I had it all. And in a lot of ways, I did. But every time I went home to visit my family, there was a small, nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I loved them. I did. But there was this pattern. A pattern I was too blind to see for the longest time. I was the one who sacrificed, the one who worked harder and gave more. My mom would always say, "Madison, you're the only one who can help. You're stronger. You've always been the one to take care of things." And at first, I didn't mind. But over time, I realized that helping wasn't the problem. It was the fact that they expected it. They never asked. They just took. And Aunt Paige, my sister, she was always the golden child, the one who never had to try, the one who was always coddled, the one who could do no wrong. And I was the one who had to pick up the slack. I never got the same kind of praise or affection. But I didn't care. I loved them. I thought that was enough. I gave up so much. So many moments of my life. I didn't even realize how much until it was too late. And then came the cruise. The family trip. My mom called me, practically begging me to cover Paige's share. She just can't afford it right now. "It's been a hard year," she said. I agreed. Of course. It was just a small thing. Right. But it wasn't small. It never was. I had already paid for my share. But now, though I was paying for hers, too, it didn't stop there. Though? Oh, no. This wasn't just about the money. This was about me being the one who was always expected to fix everything, to make everything right. Every time Paige struggled, I was the one who had to step in. Whether it was her failing at school, her lost jobs, or even her emotional baggage, I was always there. I thought that was what family was supposed to do. Looking back now, it's clear. It wasn't family. It was manipulation. And I was too blinded by love to see it. But I didn't realize how deep it all went until one simple moment, a moment I'll never forget. It was my birthday, 32. It should have been a day to celebrate me, to appreciate the person I had become. But instead, it turned into a nightmare. That cake. It was my mom's famous vanilla almond cake with pink frosting, the one she made for every occasion. It looked perfect. Too perfect. I had no idea. Though, not until my daughter, Zoe, pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't eat the cake." I thought she was just being a kid, being dramatic. I laughed it off. But Zoe wasn't joking. Her face was pale. She was serious. And when she looked up at me, with those wide eyes, I realized that something was wrong. Something bigger than I could have ever imagined. And then the police knocked on the door. 17 minutes after Zoe's warning. The doorbell rang. I didn't understand it at the time, but it was the moment my entire world flipped upside down. I didn't know it then, but that cake wasn't just a birthday tradition. It was the catalyst, the moment I would finally see them for who they really were. And that's when I realized I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't just a person they could use. I was done. Done with being the one who always gave. Done with being the one who kept the family together. They had crossed a line I would never let them cross again. The game had changed. Looking back now, it's hard to even remember a time when I wasn't the one who had to step up. From a young age, I was always the responsible one. The one who took care of things. The one who had to be the adult when my parents weren't around. My sister Paige, on the other hand, never had to lift a finger. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. It was like everything in life was handed to her, while I was left to figure it all out on my own. Growing up, there was this invisible line drawn between us. Paige was the one who could get away with anything, whether it was skipping school or sneaking out late at night. Our parents always looked the other way. But me? I was expected to be the perfect daughter. No mistakes. Always calm. Always composed. Even when I was hurting inside, I had to smile and pretend everything was fine. And it wasn't just the small things. It was the big stuff, too. When I got into college, I had to figure out how to pay for everything on my own. My parents didn't help. They barely even acknowledged it. I had to work 2 jobs just to keep up with tuition and living expenses, all while Paige was still at home, pampered and protected, as if nothing was expected of her. I self-funded my education. I worked long hours, barely had time for friends, and struggled to keep my head above water. But I did it. I made it. I graduated with honors. I remember that day so clearly, holding my diploma in my hands, finally feeling like I had achieved something. But even then, I wasn't allowed to enjoy the moment. My family was there. Sure, but they weren't proud of me the way they were proud of Paige. No. They were too busy making sure she was taken care of. I should have been the focus of that day. But somehow, I wasn't. Every achievement I had, it felt like it wasn't mine to keep. I had to share it, even when I didn't want to. It was like my life. My success was always being overshadowed by Paige's needs. And I let it happen. For years, I let it happen. But as time passed, the sacrifices became harder. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was my time, my energy, my emotional well-being. Every time I gave something, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being the good daughter, the responsible one. I thought my family needed me, and that was enough. Looking back now, I realized they didn't need me. They needed my money. They needed my support, but they never truly saw me. Not for who I was, not for all I had achieved on my own. There were moments when I would say no, but those moments were rare. And every time I said no, it felt like I was betraying them, like I was being selfish. Mom would call and say, "Madison, you've always been the one to help. We're family. We have to take care of each other." And every time, I would cave, because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to belong. And then, Paige's constant struggle became my problem. When she lost her job for the second time, she called me, crying. "I just need a little help," she begged. "It's only temporary." Of course, I couldn't say no. So, I started sending her $200 every month. Not a huge amount, but enough to make a difference. Enough to help her get by. It became a routine. Every first Friday of the month, I would send the money. It felt like a small thing. But the problem was, it never stopped. I kept giving, and Paige kept taking. But I never said anything. I never questioned it. I was just doing what I had been taught. Keep the peace. Keep helping. Keep giving. After all, that's what family does. Right. They help each other. They support each other. Looking back now, I see it clearly. I was being exploited, used, and I never even realized it. Not until the day I discovered the truth. And that truth came crashing down one day, completely out of nowhere. It was supposed to be my birthday, a day for me to relax, to celebrate everything I had worked for. But instead, it was the day everything I thought I knew about my family fell apart. I should have known something was wrong when Zoe, my daughter, pulled me aside at my birthday dinner and whispered, "Don't eat the cake." I laughed it off at first, thinking she was just being silly. But the look on her face was enough to make me stop. She wasn't joking. She wasn't playing. She was serious. And that's when everything changed. I didn't realize it at the time. But that cake wasn't just a birthday cake. It was the beginning of the end. I thought I had been helping. I thought I was doing what was right. But what they didn't know was that everything they had been doing to me, all those years of manipulation, was about to come to an end. And when Zoe whispered those words to me, I had no idea how deep it went. But I knew. In that moment, I was done. I was done being their doormat. Done being the one who always gave. This was the point where I would finally take control. This was when I would stop letting them use me. And I would make them pay for everything they had done. The game had changed. And I wasn't going to lose this time. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the way my family acted around me, it was deeper than that. For years, I had brushed aside the small signs, the comments, and the little things that didn't quite sit right. But that day, on my birthday, when Zoe pulled me aside and warned me about the cake, I couldn't ignore it anymore. That was the moment I knew something was going on, something far worse than I had imagined. After Zoe's warning, I couldn't just sit there and pretend everything was fine. I tried to push it out of my mind, but the thought kept creeping back. My family had always made excuses for Paige. She's been through so much. They would say, "She's struggling, and she needs help." But I had given, and I had given enough. What I didn't know then was that the betrayal was much bigger than a simple financial request. It was more than just my sister asking for money again, or my mom pleading for a handout to support Paige's latest crisis. No. This time, it was a planned attack, a calculated effort to take me down without me even knowing it. I should have seen the signs earlier. Looking back now, it was all so clear. My mom, always smiling, always acting like everything was fine. But every time I asked for something, every time I needed help, there was an excuse. "You're the strong one, Madison. You don't need anything." I had always been the strong one. But the truth was, I was carrying them. I was holding everything together. And I was too blind to see that I wasn't getting anything in return. After Zoe's warning, I couldn't let it go. Something inside me snapped. I had to know the truth. I started to pay closer attention. I went back over every conversation, every moment, every little thing that didn't add up. I started reviewing my messages, my bank records, my phone calls with my family. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the bigger picture. That's when I found the first piece of the puzzle. A text message from Paige. It was dated 2 days before my birthday. And it wasn't just a casual conversation. She was discussing how to make sure I wouldn't attend the family cruise. She and my mom had already decided how to get me out of the picture. They'd been planning it for weeks. They didn't want me there. They wanted me out of the way. It hit me like a ton of bricks. They had been scheming against me. They didn't care about me at all. I wasn't their family member, who they loved and cared for. I was just a tool they used. They wanted to control me, manipulate me. And when I stopped being useful, they would just push me aside. The more I looked, the more I found. A few days later, I discovered more messages. In one conversation, my mom had said, "She's too strong. She won't ever let us help. She's too busy. But we need to make sure she's not going." I was stunned. It was all coming together, now the pieces of the puzzle, the subtle hints, and the overwhelming truth that I had ignored for so long. I had always been there for them. Every time my sister failed, every time my mom needed something, I was there. I thought I was doing the right thing. But what I didn't realize was that they were never going to change. They were never going to stop using me until I stopped letting them. But it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the cruise. What really hit me, what really broke me, was when I went through the messages between Paige and my mom. They had been discussing me, their own daughter, their sister, like I was a problem to get rid of. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as an obstacle, something to be dealt with. And that's when I realized how deep this went. It wasn't just one isolated incident. This had been going on for years. Every sacrifice I made, every penny I gave, every moment I put my own life on hold to help them, it had all been in vain. They didn't appreciate me. They never had. I started to think about everything they had asked me to do. My mom and Paige had always justified it. It's just a little help. It's just temporary. But it wasn't. It wasn't temporary. And I wasn't just helping anymore. I was being used. Every single time I helped, it was another way for them to take from me. And when I couldn't give anymore, they'd find a new way to make sure I still did. I had seen it before, but I had ignored it. The small lies, the guilt trips, the manipulation. I had thought it was just the way things were in my family. But now, with everything laid out in front of me, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend like this was just family dynamics. This was abuse, emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and I had been too caught up in my love for them to see it. The more I uncovered, the more my anger grew. I wasn't just upset. I was furious. Furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. Furious at them for taking advantage of me for so long. And most of all, I was angry because I realized that I had been complicit in my own abuse. I had allowed them to use me. I had allowed them to make me feel guilty for saying no. But now, everything was going to change. I had the proof. I had the documents. I had the messages. I had everything I needed to expose them for who they really were. And I was going to do it. The betrayal had cut deep, but it also opened my eyes. I had been living in a lie. I wasn't going to live that way anymore. I wasn't going to let them win. Not anymore. I gathered the evidence I needed, and I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. I wasn't going to be the one they could always count on to fix their mess. It was time to make them pay for what they had done. The moment I realized the depth of their betrayal, it was like a switch flipped inside me. Everything changed. It wasn't just about the cake anymore, or the messages. It was about everything I had done for them, all the years I had sacrificed, all the love I thought I was giving that had only been used to manipulate me. I couldn't unsee it now. I couldn't pretend anymore. The blinders had come off. When Zoe told me, "Don't eat the cake." I had thought it was just a warning from a child. But now, I realized it was so much more. The cake wasn't just about making sure I didn't go on the family trip. It was about making me sick, making sure I couldn't be there, that I couldn't be the one who got the attention. And I wasn't just being paranoid anymore. No. This was calculated. It was methodical. My own family was planning to remove me from the picture because I was the one standing in the way. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how long they had been planning this. They didn't just come up with it the night before my birthday. This had been brewing for years. They had been using me, manipulating me, treating me like I was their lifeline, their safety net. And I had been so blind to it. The guilt they instilled in me, the expectation that I would always be there to pick up the pieces, it all became clear. They saw me as a resource, a tool, not as a person, not as their daughter, their sister. But as much as I was angry, as much as I felt betrayed, something inside me clicked. I was done. Done being their emotional ATM. Done being the responsible one who always fixed their mess. This was the wake-up call I needed. I started looking through all the evidence I had collected. Every text, every phone call, every email. And the more I dug, the more I found. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about me being the reliable one who always came through when they were in trouble. No, this was deeper. This was a pattern of emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and gaslighting. I could see it now, how they had been setting me up, trying to make me feel guilty for saying no. Every time I had set a boundary, every time I had tried to pull back, they had made me feel selfish, ungrateful, like I wasn't doing my part as a family member. But now, I saw it for what it really was. Manipulation. The cake was just the final straw, the tipping point. But there had been so many other moments like it, so many small things I had brushed off over the years. Like when my mom would call me in the middle of a workday, just to talk about something that wasn't urgent. But I'd stop everything for her because I didn't want to seem like I was neglecting her. Or when Paige would forget to pay me back after I lent her money again. It seemed innocent at the time. But looking back, I see how they made me feel obligated. How they made me feel like I had to always put them first. Even when it cost me everything. That night, as I sat there processing everything, I felt a cold calm wash over me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't overwhelmed with guilt. I wasn't trying to figure out how to fix things for them anymore. I was finally ready to take control of my own life. I had to let go of the idea that I had to be the savior. I wasn't responsible for their failures. I wasn't responsible for making up for their mistakes. And that's when I knew I had to act. I had to make sure they couldn't use me anymore. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. Not for another second. I called my lawyer first. I had to figure out how to protect myself. I needed a professional's guidance to navigate what was coming. The plan I was about to execute wouldn't just be about ending the financial exploitation. It would be about taking back my power, my peace, and my future. The legal consequences would be a big part of that. I was calm. I was calculated. This wasn't going to be an emotional outburst. It wasn't going to be messy. I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to expose them. And I had to do it in a way that left no room for them to deny what they'd done. I started with the financial records, everything I had paid for over the years. Every dollar I had sent to Paige. Every expense I had covered for them. Then, I moved on to the messages, those texts between Paige and my mom, where they discussed how to make sure I wouldn't go on the trip. I had it all proof of their lies, their manipulation, their betrayal. And then came the most difficult part. I had to prepare myself to share it. To put it all out there. I couldn't keep it all hidden anymore. They had taken enough from me. It was time for them to face the consequences. I reached out to a few close friends who knew the situation. who could back me up and provide support. I couldn't go through this alone. I wasn't going to let them isolate me like they always had. I was ready to stand my ground. I didn't make the decision to expose them lightly, but I knew it was the only way. I had given so much of myself to them, and in return, I had been broken down, used, and discarded. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was about my own survival, my own sense of self-worth, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me anymore. The game was finally on my terms, and this time, I was playing to win. The moment I decided to take action, there was no turning back. I had spent years being used, manipulated, and exploited. I knew I had to do this, but I couldn't let emotion cloud my judgment. This had to be calculated, calm, strategic. I wasn't just going to lash out in anger. I was going to destroy their ability to ever do this to me again. The first step was simple. I had to make sure everything was documented. Every conversation, every text message, every financial transaction, everything. I already had enough to bury them, but I needed to make sure there was no room for denial. I started with the texts between my mom and Paige, the ones where they discussed how to sabotage my trip. I knew they would try to claim I was overreacting or misunderstanding the situation. But this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a calculated plot, and I was going to expose it. I reached out to my lawyer, who was already familiar with my situation. He understood the stakes. The emotional toll this had taken on me was obvious, but he wasn't just focused on the emotional side. He was looking at the bigger picture. "Madison," he said, "this isn't just about betrayal. This is about your financial security. It's about their negligence and abuse. We're going to make sure this stops here." I couldn't help but feel a little more confident with him by my side. I wasn't alone in this anymore. And with his expertise, I was prepared for what came next. Next, I called my bank. I started the process of freezing accounts and stopping all automatic payments I had been making to my family. It was hard at first. When I hit that button, canceling the monthly transfer to Paige, it felt like I was cutting something inside myself. But I had to do it. This wasn't just for me anymore. It was about stopping them from using me again. Then came the hardest part. I had to prepare for the confrontation. I knew that once I exposed everything, there would be no going back. I couldn't just email them or call them up and say, "Hey, here's what I found. I'm done." Not no. It had to be bigger than that. It had to be a public reckoning. I didn't want to be vindictive. I didn't want to get into a screaming match or drag it out longer than necessary. But I had to make sure they knew exactly what they had done and that they were going to pay for it. I started by posting everything. Every piece of evidence. The screenshots. The bank records. The police report. I laid it all out on social media. I knew it was the only way to make sure they understood the consequences. I didn't want to keep it hidden anymore. I didn't want to protect them. The response came almost immediately. Some people were in shock, others in disbelief, but most people, those who mattered, were supportive. The support came from people who had seen how much I had sacrificed for my family. They knew the truth, even if they hadn't known the full story before. And that gave me strength. I had friends and colleagues who had seen how I had bent over backward for them. They weren't just going to let this go either. But Paige and my mom, they were furious. I didn't even have to be there to hear the venom in their voices. I knew they were scrambling to cover their tracks, to try to paint me as the villain. They would accuse me of airing our dirty laundry, of being a bad daughter, a bad sister. But I was done with the guilt. I was done with the manipulation. When my phone buzzed with a message from my mom, I didn't even hesitate to open it. "Madison, this is ridiculous." It read, "You've gone too far. This is your family. You're destroying us. You'll regret this." I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, almost detached. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm not destroying anything. I'm exposing the truth. You and Paige have been using me for years. I'm done." I didn't hear from them for days. I think they thought I would cave, that I would apologize, that I would beg them to take me back into their fold. But I wasn't going to do that. Not this time. And then came the final blow. I reached out to my professional network. I needed to make sure this wasn't just a personal issue anymore. I wanted to make sure they knew exactly who I was and who they were. I started sharing the story with colleagues, supervisors, and people I trusted in my industry. I wasn't doing it out of revenge. I was doing it to take back control over my own narrative. The fallout from that was intense. Paige's reputation took a hit. My mom's social circle started to question her. People who had known them for years began to understand the truth. And that felt good. But the real weight came from the professionals who saw the case for what it was, a systematic exploitation of someone who had done nothing but give. The legal consequences started to unfold. My lawyer got involved, and we began discussing how to move forward with a formal complaint for financial exploitation. I knew it would take time. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But I was ready. This wasn't just about making my family suffer. It was about setting boundaries, about making sure that the people who had used me for so long never had the chance again. In the meantime, things at work began to shift. My colleagues, who had always admired my work ethic, saw me in a new light. They saw me as someone who was no longer willing to sacrifice her happiness and well-being for others. They respected me more. They saw me as stronger, more confident. And that validation, from the people who mattered in my career, was worth more than I had ever realized. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The pressure was still there. The pain was still fresh. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't waiting for someone else to fix things for me. I wasn't hoping for validation from my family. I had done the hard work to get here, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that away from me. The worst part was over. The hardest part was done. The rest was just following through. And I was ready. Ready to live for myself for the first time. Ready to take back everything they had taken from me. The fallout came faster than I expected. I'd anticipated some resistance, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional weight of seeing everything I had exposed come to light. It wasn't just the texts, the bank records, or the incriminating messages. It was the realization that my family had been hiding behind a facade of love, manipulating me for years. And now, they were being forced to face the truth. The first response I got was from Paige. She texted me early the next morning after everything was already public, demanding to know why I had done this. Her words dripped with frustration and anger. "You've gone too far. You've ruined our family. You think this will make you happy?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm not ruining anything," I replied. "I'm exposing what's been hidden for years. You and Mom have been using me, manipulating me. It's time for it to stop." I didn't expect her to reply after that. And she didn't. But my phone was blowing up. My mom, on the other hand, couldn't stay silent. I could see her messages flooding in as the day went on. They were all variations of the same thing. "You'll regret this. You've destroyed us. You've broken your family apart." Part of me wanted to feel guilty. After all, these were the people who had raised me, the people I had loved unconditionally. But as I read through their messages, something shifted inside me. I wasn't the one who had broken the family. They had done that long before I ever decided to stand up for myself. I didn't respond. Not right away. I needed to let it sit, to let the weight of my actions settle in. The more I sat with it, the more I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't filled with rage or even disappointment. I was just done. I had reached the point where I knew I had done the right thing. I had to make them face the consequences of their actions. And I wasn't going to back down. The truth had to come out. And I was the one who was going to ensure it did. It didn't take long for the professional repercussions to start rolling in. Paige's reputation at work started to crumble. The company she worked for began to question her professional integrity as the truth about her exploitation became public knowledge. My mom, who had always prided herself on her social standing, started to see the cracks. Her friends, the ones who had always seen her as the perfect, selfless mother, were starting to pull away. The most significant shift, however, was in my own life. I could feel the change in the air. My colleagues, people I had worked with for years, began to see me differently. They respected me more. They saw the strength I hadn't even realized I had. As the story spread, I started to receive messages of support from people who had seen me sacrifice so much for my family over the years. They knew what I had been through. They knew what I was capable of. At first, it was just a few comments here and there. A text from a colleague saying, "I'm proud of you. You've done something a lot of people wouldn't have had the courage to do." And then it was more. My boss, who had been impressed with my work ethic, but never really seen the personal side of me, pulled me aside one afternoon. "I've been hearing about what's going on," he said. "I want you to know that we've got your back. You're not alone in this." Those words, those simple words of support, meant more to me than I could ever put into words. It was the validation I needed. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't someone who had been taken advantage of. I was someone who had the strength to stand up, to walk away from the toxicity, and to take back control of my life. As I watched the aftermath unfold, I realized the full extent of what had happened. Paige and my mom were left to deal with the wreckage. They were alone. No one was there to defend them. No one was there to cover for them. They had built their lives on lies. And now, it was all coming apart. I didn't need to revel in their downfall. I didn't need to bask in the satisfaction of their misery. I just needed them to understand that there were consequences to their actions. They couldn't keep taking from me without paying the price. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I was done. I was done with the lies, the manipulation, and the endless demands. I was done letting them make me feel guilty for wanting to live my life on my terms. The family I had known for so long, my family was no longer a part of my world. The boundaries I had set were firm and unshakable. I had rebuilt my life, step by step, without them. And that was the most powerful thing I had done. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. The final step in this journey was acceptance. Accepting that I was worthy of peace, that I had every right to take up space in my own life. They had never given me that peace. They had never let me breathe freely, without guilt or expectation. But now, for the first time in years, I could breathe. I could look ahead and feel excited for what was to come, knowing that I had done the hardest thing of all. I had let go of them, and I was finally free. It's been several months now since everything went down. The dust has settled, and as I look back, I can finally say with certainty that it was the hardest, but the best decision I ever made. Letting go of my family, my blood family, wasn't easy. It felt like a part of me was being ripped away. But now, I can see that it was necessary. It was the only way I could move forward. I've created a new life. It's not just about the career success, though that's been rewarding. It's not about the money or the achievements. It's about the peace I've found. I've surrounded myself with people who respect me, who see me for who I really am, not as someone they can use, but as someone who is worthy of love, trust, and mutual respect. These people, my chosen family, have shown me what real support looks like. They've been there for me in ways I never thought possible. I've learned that family isn't just about shared bloodlines, it's about shared values, shared respect, and unconditional support. These people, the ones who've shown up for me, are my real family. They're the ones who value me for the person I am, not for what I can give or do for them. Looking back, I see how toxic the old dynamic was. I see how much I gave and how little I got in return. And the saddest part, I never thought I was worth more than what they were taking. I thought I had to keep giving, that it was my duty. But now, I know better. I've learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. I've also learned that walking away from toxic relationships doesn't mean you're abandoning people. It means you're finally choosing to prioritize your own well-being. Choosing yourself isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of self-care. And now, for the first time in my life, I feel whole. I feel free. Have you ever had to choose yourself over a family member? Have you ever had to set boundaries that were difficult, but necessary? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, and if you've ever had to break free from someone's manipulation, I encourage you to like and subscribe. You're not alone in this. We all deserve peace, respect, and love on our terms. Thank you for listening. Stay strong. And remember, you are worthy of happiness.